Hi guys, welcome to the channel of love. Okay, so I'm finally back onto Dr. Wayne W. Dyer. You'll see it when you believe it, and we are on chapter 5, which is detachment. Let's just crack on with this. If you need to catch up, you can find the previous chapters in the playlist. Detachment is the only vehicle available to take you from striving to arriving. You would think that in a land where everything is bountiful, the people would have an eternal lock on happiness and fulfillment. It seems only logical that we here in the affluent West should indeed be the happiest people on the planet. We consume a large percentage of the world's natural resources. We have the highest standards of living in the history of mankind. We have abundant supplies of refrigerators and television sets and automobiles. These things, which we have come to think of as necessities, are in fact luxury items for some 90% of the world's population. Relative to most other people on the planet, we are rich beyond their dreams. Still, we are not blessed with contentment, happiness, and joyousness. How can this be? It seems to me that the more materialistic we become, the less trusting we are as a people. The more we have, the less we are inclined to focus on communicating basic human values. Instead, we shift our emphasis to the wallets and possessions of ourselves and others. When we have very few possessions, we are compelled to deal with each other and look directly into one another's eyes, there being nothing of a material nature to distract our gaze. As we accumulate more and more, our eyes shift to our possessions and away from one another's humanity. Consequently, in the most materialistic society in the history of humanity, we have very high levels of loneliness and despair. As we have shifted our emphasis away from human interaction, we have also produced one of the most violent cultures in human history. Loneliness and violence seem to be the natural offspring of an excessively materialistic society. The most important questions you can ask regarding your place in this culture are: how can I be a happy, loving, fulfilled human being and still function within the materialism that seems to define all of our social structure? Is it possible for me to live my life with inner joy and harmony within a larger context of greed and accumulation? How can I accomplish a daily life of love and harmony, and yes, success, when I seem to be surrounded by people who beget loneliness and violence in their perpetual pursuit of more? I believe the answers can be found in detachment. Detachment is an unwritten fact of the universe, which is always operating. The question is whether or not you are willing to tune into it, make it operative in your daily life. In our highly materialistic society, detachment is a principle that is easily rejected by those who are still chasing more and more success. It is something that many scoff at because it challenges the very fabric of their lifelong traditions and beliefs. Please understand that I am not contending that the accumulation of material wealth and possessions is evil. Having attained wealth after impoverished beginnings, I delight in the harvest that has come from having made a great deal of money. It is satisfying and lovely. I am proud of my accomplishments and do not feel apologetic for being able to purchase whatever I choose as a result of my labours. Detachment is not about denying the joy of achieving abundance. Paradoxically, it will bring more abundance into your life rather than require you to shed all of your material goods. However, you will probably find it quite easy to divest yourself of your possessions if that is your choice. Understanding what detachment means. Throughout this book, I have referred to the duality that we are, our form and our formlessness. A large part of our being is formless, a part that includes all of our thinking, spirituality, and higher consciousness. Thought is one essential dimension in which we do literally all of our living and where our higher consciousness and spirituality reside. All of our attachments are in form. I use the term attachment to describe holding on to something or defining our life purpose in terms of things or persons external to ourselves. Thus, an attachment is something in the word or form to which we have applied so much meaning that we are emotionally attached to it. We feel we must have it or some of our essential humanity will be lost. But keep in mind that our essence is in thought, where it is literally impossible to have attachments. In the dreaming body, it is possible to have attachments in thought, but the moment you awaken, you realise that the things and people to which you were attached are illusions created for the dream. When you truly awaken, you will see the insignificance of any attachment to any of your stuff. Imagine yourself after leaving this planet, dying, looking back at all of your attachments. You can see how unimportant they will then be. Think of this principle of detachment in a like manner. Detach yourself from the need to hold on to things and people. In essence, you can never own anyone or anything. Every attachment is an impediment to living at a higher level of consciousness. On another level, attachments are responsible for reduced personal happiness and success. The more you can let go of people and things, the fewer obstacles you have for your life journey. The ability to be detached from all things and all people and yet still see yourself as a part of the whole of humanity is one of the greatest paradoxes of the spiritual journey. At this point in my own life, I truly know that I am connected to all other human beings in oneness, and at the same moment, I know that I no longer have to be attached to, that is, have to hold on to in order to make me complete, anyone in the body called humanity, nor is it necessary for me to accumulate anything else in order to feel whole. What I have, I value and celebrate. Thus, my detachment from needing anything or any person in order to feel whole and complete allows me to flow and simply be in life, rather than to fight life or demand anything from anyone. Detachment is the absence of a need to hold onto anyone or anything. It does not mean not having things. It is a way of thinking and being which gives us the freedom to flow with life, as does everything that is given to us by God. Detachment is accomplished in the dimension of formlessness or thought. It is a cleansing process that ultimately leads to freedom from a need to live so much in the world of form. It is not being a slave to the attachment of all of those things that you are accumulating. It is arriving rather than a life of striving. It is experiencing what it feels like to row your boat gently down the stream, to flow without impediments. It is a portrait of the perfection of the universe, flowing down the stream. Flowing as a means to detachment. The more we are attached to people, things, ideas and emotions, the less we are able to experience these phenomena authentically. Try squeezing a handful of water and see how quickly it disappears. But relax your hand and let your hand flow in the same water, and you have the experience of the water as long as you like. This is the principle of detachment and flowing. Allowing things to flow naturally is the way of the universe. Everything in the universe, yes, everything, is energy, and that includes you. Energy must have a free flow in order for it to be most efficient. Allowing things to flow naturally is the way of the universe. Air flows around the planet without interruption. Water flows throughout the entire physical plane with the path of least resistance. The Earth itself flows perfectly without interruption on its axis, as do all heavenly bodies in the universe. The entire universe may be said to be one large energy system, flowing around any efforts to bridle the movement of that energy. It works in harmony with all of its components without any demands or attachments to how things should be going. Keep in mind that human beings too are an energy system. We too are part of the life force that is one song. And since all energy wants to flow unimpeded, it seems only natural to conclude that in order for us to function perfectly in our universe, we too need to be flowing, uninterrupted by attachments. The fewer impediments to the energy flow, the more effectively we fit into and harmonise with the entire energy system called the universe. Attachments which cause us to believe we must have more things and more control of others are impediments to higher consciousness and living the awakened, transformed life. Detachment is one of life's great lessons for those on the path of enlightenment. How your form functions in the universe. You are one exquisitely perfect energy system. Yes, you. You are not working at making your body do what it must do in order to sustain life within you. You are not attached to the actions that your body performs every moment that you are in form. You are not trying to make your entire system function. It is working perfectly without any direction from you. In fact, if you try to direct your bodily functions, you will become an impediment to its perfectly flowing energy and systematic working. As an example, imagine yourself eating a salad and swallowing the lettuce after chewing it up. Look at all of the chores that you and the one piece of lettuce must perform in order for it to do its job of nourishing you. Saliva automatically enters your mouth to help with the chewing process. You are busy salivating. It just happens. Then when you start to swallow the chewed up lettuce, you do not actively work the peristaltic muscles of your throat in order to make the lettuce go down instead of up. It happens without any help or interference from you. You do not direct the lettuce mulch to enter your bloodstream. The digestive process causes the lettuce to do precisely what it is supposed to do and go exactly where it is supposed to go, and transforms the lettuce into nutrients to provide the precise amounts of lettuce nutrition wherever they are needed. The nutrients from the lettuce that are needed for your pancreas never mistakenly go to your big toe. Never have you had to do one thing within the system that is you in order to make it all work perfectly. You have absolutely no attachments to anything having to do with the lettuce once you have chewed it up. The journey of the lettuce does not require your attention. You are never busy talking to and working on your digestive, respiratory, or elimination systems. They all simply work without any interference from you. On a similar note, your heart beats thousands of times each and every day of your life. When did you ever spend time trying to beat your heart? It works automatically and perfectly, and the less attached you are to how it is working, the less likely you are to have trouble with it. You see, there are many, many functions being performed at all moments of your life that you have nothing to say about. They all work perfectly because they are in harmony with higher universal principles. There is no need for you to interfere. More likely, any interferences on your part would inhibit the natural flow of these functions. This, then, is how you, as a system of systems, function within the largest system of all, our universe. The energy flows just as it is supposed to. The food goes in, your perfection takes over, and everything works as it is designed to. Interference by you will only curb that natural flow and consequently do damage to the perfection that you are. Now, I want you to shift your perspective away from the microscope that has been examining you and look through the telescope to see the bigger picture. The universe is a system of systems similar to the perfect systems that function in a human being. It too works on many principles that are beyond our control, that work independent of our opinion about them, work even if we do not understand them. And most important, they work best when we do not interfere and simply allow the energy to flow unimpeded. I like to compare this process to the lettuce, which is nothing more than energy, making its way throughout your system, dropping off the precise amount of nutrients where it is supposed to. You, like the lettuce, perform your functions perfectly. This is the intelligence that is behind all form. This is the force, or the God, or the spirit, or whatever you choose to call it, that is a part of all form, working in harmony without any interference or attachments. Now for the big leap. A moment ago you were the system that was using the lettuce. Now imagine yourself as a giant piece of lettuce. Shift outward and become the metaphorical lettuce that is a part of the biggest picture of all, your place in the universe. You too are a large chunk of energy, flowing perfectly within a larger system, and within a larger system to infinity. You too can do exactly what you are designed for, as long as you do not interfere with the role within this perfect system. You do not have to try to do what you think is your role. You have to be like the lettuce and let everything work perfectly. You need to understand that every attachment you have to how things are supposed to be interferes in some way with your perfect functioning within the larger system. You need to understand that every possession that you become attached to has the same effect on this perfectly functioning energy system, as if the lettuce in your intestines had picked up some baggage that it had to take along with it on its journey. You know what would happen to you if that lettuce somehow decided that it had to have more in order to function properly. It would affect not only the lettuce and your stomach and your respiration, but eventually your existence as well. Obviously, I realise that we are much more complex than a piece of lettuce, but the analogy serves to remind us that the universal principles work perfectly without any interference or resistance. When you apply the principle of detachment to your daily life, you will discover that you are functioning freely and flowing with the energy system that is the universe. Even more significantly, you will discover you are allowing the energy of the entire universe to flow uninterrupted through you. The more that you are able to flow without the attachments, the happier and more contented you will feel. Moreover, the things that you previously chased after endlessly, always ending up wanting more anyway, will now arrive in your life in the precise amounts necessary to take care of you and your loved ones. Combine this with the more flowing into your life in an almost effortless fashion. You will eventually keep the energy flowing by circulating and giving away all that you do not need. Then, miracle of miracles, The more you give away, the more you have. It is a glorious, perfect system when you allow it to work without any interference. Our interference is due to some kind of attachment that we have grown to believe we cannot possibly live comfortably without. How I learned to apply this principle. In the 4th through the 8th grades, I would sit in my seat in school silently pining for Erlene Rentz, the love of my life. I thought she was beautiful, yet I could never seem to muster the courage to tell her. We lived in the same neighbourhood, and I was friendly with her older brother, so I would see her quite regularly. She always held a special place in my heart. Recently I received a letter from her telling me that she had read some of my books and that she had seen a story about me in the Wayne State University Alumni magazine. On a lark, I decided to call her. Eileen and I talked for about 40 minutes. I told her of my youthful love for her, and she replied I knew that. I couldn't believe that she knew all those years. During our conversation, she said, "Wayne, the thing that stands out the most about you in my mind is that you were never really connected with possessions, and you were the most generous person in our class." I was somewhat surprised that this was Arlene's most prominent memory, and yet when I look back, I believe her assessment was correct. Somehow I knew that being attached to something was the surest way to be certain that one never appeared to have enough of it. While many of the other children my age would talk about wanting something, I was generally quite content with what I had. In fact, I would help my friends figure out ways to get things that they seemed to want so desperately. When I was a teenager and a young man, my friends had souped up drag races and would talk endlessly about wanting this or that fancy car, yet I was in love with my 1950 Plymouth and its profusion of rust spots and its deficiencies. It never seemed to matter. As I look back, I see that I was comfortable with detachment even then. I have very few of the items that seem to decorate the lives of wealthy people. Fancy clothes plays no part in my life, and hoarding a lot of expensive possessions does not even enter my consciousness. Yet paradoxically again, I seem to have acquired the ability to have all of these things anyone could ever desire. It seems the less I concern myself with acquisitions, the more they arrive in my life for me to use and recirculate. There is something very profound in the seeming paradox, more is less. For me, having more means having to insure it, protect it, polish it, worry about it, try to double it, brag about it, price it, maybe sell it for a profit, and so on and on. Of course, one can appreciate the beauty in any object and truly receive enjoyment from it, but that is not attachment. That is simply allowing the energy of your appreciation and love to flow through the object and back into you. If you wonder about the difference between attachment and enjoyment, ask yourself how you would react if suddenly an object you value was gone, stolen, broken, lost, or whatever. Would you be distorted with anger and worry? Would you become immobilized and unable to function effectively with yourself and your loved ones? That is attachment. The need that is attached to the object gives it some degree of control or power over your emotions. I truly know in my heart, as does my wife, that if any object that we have suddenly disappeared, I would say something like, "It is now where it is supposed to be. I hope that whoever is using or observing it is receiving some kind of joy and happiness. It is just a thing, and I am not attached to it." This is not to suggest indifference to thieves and careless people. It is a suggestion that you do not allow your stuff to own you. Be able to detach yourself and your humanity and life purpose from mere things that only have the value we ascribe to them. If we can ascribe value to a thing simply by a thought process, then of course we can detach ourselves from that value added process equally effectively through a different process. A perfect example of this presented itself while I was writing this book. After a 3-hour radio talk show in Miami, I made an impulsive choice to accept a long-standing invitation. Marie Provenzano, whose business is providing luxury facials, had written me numerous letters describing how she had benefited from my tapes and books. Over the years, she had invited me to her studio for a complimentary facial treatment as her way of showing her appreciation. For whatever reason that was operating in the universe, I decided to stop on my way home from Miami and have my very first facial. As I settled in for this new experience, Marie told me she had had a mild stroke several years earlier, and she felt she had cured herself through repeatedly listening to my tapes. It felt very good to hear that I had played a role in helping someone overcome such an affliction. She showed absolutely no signs of ever having a stroke. Marie explained to me that prior to the stroke, she had always been concerned with being a perfect person. She described how she loved to entertain, yet made it a stressful experience for herself because everything had to be exactly right. She created evenings which were showcases of expensive gowns and jewellery, food of the finest gourmet quality, and table decor that displayed the originality and taste for which she wanted to be known. She loved the compliments she received for these perfect evenings. Looking back, she said she now realises that much of her life was concerned with meaning derived from attachments. One of these perfect evenings became a turning point in her life. Instead of lavish compliments, a female guest said, "Marie, aren't you tired of all this show and having to do everything perfectly?" Marie told me that she simply broke down crying. The woman walked with her over to the couch, put her arm around her, and comforted her for 2 hours. They talked about the real Marie, the person behind the baubles and the fancy dinner tables. They talked about how easy it is to disguise oneself in external stuff and how lonely it is to end up caressing your jewels rather than looking into the eyes and heart of a fellow human being. They talked about ways to rechannel energy, to serve others, and to get back to the real person inside the cage of possession. It was the beginning of an authentic friendship. Marie suffered her stroke shortly after that, and her new friend helped her to transcend it. Together they studied the literature of love and harmony, and Marie began teaching a course on my materials at a community college in the area. Today she has 45 students enrolled in a life enrichment class that is growing faster than Marie can believe. She begins her classes by describing how her attachment to things and possessions had blocked her ability to see the beauty and joy available in human relationships. How an evening which began as one more perfectly attached dinner party changed her life and led to a discovery of how to live better and even how to cure herself of the effects of a stroke. Marie is one of the happiest and most delightful people I have ever met. She was thrilled to share this transformational story with me and blurted out, "I just can't believe that you are really here in my studio. You, my guru, the man I've listened to for hundreds of hours, actually here with me." I reminded her that she had as much to teach me as I her. I said, "The guru is you, not me." Not only was my face tingling, after an hour of strange and wonderful gels, vapours, massages and creams, but my heart was tingling as well. Why am I writing about Marie and how she came to know the meaning of detachment? In part because I believe Marie's story could be a catalyst to help others to recognise the hollowness in attachment, but also because I believe that I was flowing with an energy that directed me there on that day to hear that story so that I could share it with you. Attachments do not always take the form of possessions. Attachments to things is a common thread that winds its way throughout our materialistic culture, tying people up in knots because they are focused on ownership. However, there are other significant attachments, such as attachments to other people's opinions and to how we are perceived by others. I feel that my writing is able to flow because I have become unattached to what anyone else says or thinks about it. I simply allow it to flow, knowing and trusting that it will all be just as it is supposed to be. I am open to improvement, but I cannot think about that while I am writing. If I do, my focus shifts to what I should be doing instead of what I am allowing to happen. Writing is energy, just like all human activity. Ralph Waldo Emerson expressed it well. The good writer seems to be writing about himself, but has his eye on that thread of the universe which runs through himself and all things. This is what I do even at this very moment. I write about myself, but I know that I am part of you as well, even though we may not have met on the physical plane. These words flow through me to you. I do not own them, nor do you, and the less attached I am to the entire process, the easier and more pleasing it is. Do what you do for yourself, unattached to the outcome, in the sense of being emotionally attached, or as Carlos Castaneda says, thus a man of knowledge sweats and puffs, and if one looks at him, he is just like an ordinary man, except that the folly of his life is under control. His controlled folly makes him say that what he does matter, and makes him act as if it did. And yet he knows that it doesn't. So when he fulfills his acts, he retreats in peace. And whether his acts were good or bad, or worked or didn't, is in no way any part of his concern. Let's reread that part. Or as Carlos Castaneda says, thus a man of knowledge sweats and puffs, and if one looks at him, he is just like an ordinary man, except that the folly of his life is under control. His controlled folly makes him say that what he does matters, and makes him act as if it did, and yet he knows that it doesn't. So when he fulfills his acts, he retreats in peace, and whether his acts were good or bad, or worked or didn't, is in no way any part of his concern. This is a tough one for many of us, because we have grown up believing that what we do really matters. Most of us do not get the folly of our lives under control. We worry about how it will be perceived. We focus on external opinions and consequently cannot simply just be. Castaneda and others encourage us to cultivate an attitude of allowing the energy to flow through us without any judgment about it, and yet at the same time participating in it as if it really matters, and then being able to detach and turn away in peace when it feels finished. If it sounds paradoxical and inconsistent, it is because it is. Nevertheless, the detachment will help you to appreciate and enjoy what you have rather than worry about gathering more. I experience the same feelings about speaking. I do not use notes when I go up before an audience, and I haven't for years. When I gave up my notes and spoke entirely from my heart, my speaking improved significantly. I am not attached to having to please an audience, to saying it right, to anything at all. I generally meditate for a 30-minute period before speaking, and I visualise everything going smoothly and my audience and myself enjoying and appreciating the entire experience. The absence of attachment allows to flow for hours on stage, often in front of several thousand people. While I am in this state of mind on stage, I find myself in an entirely new sphere of living, a different dimension. Time ceases to exist. My memory for recall is more phenomenal than at any other time in my life. The words flow without even a hitch or a pause, and it all fits together perfectly. When I gave up my attachment to perfection about speaking, paradoxically, a kind of perfection seemed to enter into my performance on stage. The internal excitement and nervousness before speaking is my intense desire to be out there in that magical space where I am doing what I love and allowing myself to just be and experiencing the energy flowing through me unimpeded by any attachments to the outcome. This free flowing energy is the highest place I know about in the physical plane. In these two areas of my life where I am doing what I love, writing and speaking, I have come to understand that detachment from the outcome and detachment from external opinions are the keys to allowing me to flow freely and perfectly. No trying, no worrying, no anxiety about it. I simply allow myself to be without interference from my mind about any part of it. I know somewhere deep down inside of me that I am making a difference, but that it is not necessary for me to do so. I know that even making it matter is a judgment of sorts, so that in the largest analysis it really does not matter, but I believe as if it truly did. Yet when I am finished with my speech or a book, I never look back. I know that it is over, and that regardless of anyone's opinion about it, it is still done just the way it is. So I move on to the next challenge, unimpeded by attachment to what I have already finished. I learn from the previous experience and go on to the next project. This new project does not truly matter, but I act as if it did. The process involves, as Castaneda said, having the folly of our lives under control. The way to do that is simply to be, rather than having to be the way others think we should be. Be detached and enjoy each moment of energy that flows through you. My wife and children are the dearest people in the world to me, and I have truly transformed by thinking towards them and have altered many of the attachments I previously held in my life. This is a major transformation for me, and one which has brought us to a new sense of love and serenity. I love my wife deeply, yet I know that I do not own her in any way. My inner knowingness recognises that she is on her own path, and that being married to me is a part of that journey she is on. I am most grateful when we share a big part of each other's life. It has taken quite some time and some bitter disappointments in other relationships to enjoy the experience of loving someone without having to control her in any way. I can allow this person that I love simply to be, even though that may be diametrically opposite to what I am or to what I may prefer her to be. For me, this is the essence of the marriage relationship at a conscious loving level. The ability to suspend judgment about how we feel our loved one should be conducting his or her life. And to love that person as is a valuable exercise in detachment. Suspending judgment means honouring her need and right to be on her path according to her own inner directives without my uninvited input. Suspending judgment also means honouring my need and right to feel what I am feeling without judging my feeling as right or wrong. This is unconditional love for myself and my loved one. Unconditional love does not demand that one of us be right and one of us wrong. When you are strongly attached to judging anyone, you are not defining him or her, you are just defining yourself. My wife and I are very different from each other. In many respects, I would describe us as opposites. Love often seems to work this way, allowing us to have in our loved one some of the qualities that we have not elected for ourselves. We do not seem to fall in love with those who have identical qualities. Perhaps that is because we already live with those ways of being in all of our waking moments, and to choose them in another would make for a redundant relationship. I have stopped judging and fighting the differences, and instead remind myself to be grateful for the new flavour that she brings so deliciously into my life every day. We lovingly and playfully acknowledge that we do have to please each other all the time, that we do, I'm just going to repeat that, we lovingly and playfully acknowledge that we do not have to please each other all the time, nor do we have to understand each other. This is the quality that detachment from ownership in a relationship brings. It allows us to truly appreciate the opposite, strange qualities in each other. When a need to convert her appears, I remind myself that I fell in love with this woman for what she is. As I was falling in love, I was not saying, if only she had a different point of view, I could love her more. It was our unconditional love that made our love flourish and grow. If the need to change her in some way nags at me, I look inward for what it is saying about me. I find relief from the need to change her when I discover what it is about the trait that I am disowning. On other occasions, I admit to being inwardly perplexed by her views and actions, but can also shift instantly to loving her for that, rather than having an internal dialogue which tries to make her wrong. I have found that by being this way in my marriage, more and more I automatically behave in this same fashion towards all others. I know from my own personal experience that any attachment to being right automatically defines me and says absolutely nothing about other people. I finally realised that other people are going to be exactly the way they are, independent of my opinion about them. This allows me simply to be in my relationship towards all others. No judgment, no anger, no hostility, simply to be. Since I have become less attached to making others wrong and consequently making myself right, it is much easier to be with people who view life differently from the way I do. When I do slip into judgment, I find that I am much gentler and easier on myself. I allow myself to have that burst of inner anger for a fleeting moment, and again, paradoxically, when I allow the feeling of anger to be, it usually leaves. If it persists, I non-judgmentally consider the issue here. Ironically, I find I have much greater impact on people who are mistreating another or behaving in prejudicial ways, since I am more detached. My detachment from needing to be right almost catches them off guard, and instantly they say that I am not going to get myself all worked up simply because they decide to act or think in their own way. The peaceful person, unattached to converting others or to making them wrong, is far more powerful in helping to bring about constructive loving behaviour than the person who judgmentally and angrily demands change in others. Recently, at a club where I play tennis, several people were engaged in an angry discussion. They were divided on a racial issue, with one side criticising an ethnic group and the other side criticising the first side for their lack of compassion and love. One person stopped and said, "Wayne, what do you think? I never see you upset about these things. You must have an opinion." I responded, "I am sitting here sending all of you my love. If you could do that to each other right now, there wouldn't even need to be a discussion about who should love whom." They stopped and looked at me as if I were a bit weird, but they also discontinued judging each other for those few moments. This approach to loving everyone, even those who seem to be so different, started in my marriage and has extended outward. It becomes easier and easier to be unattached when you are at peace with yourself. That kind of inner peace contributes more to the world than being one more combatant in the endless feuds that arise out of a lack of respect for the differences in others. I have found it much easier to be an effective partner since I have truly understood and adopted the words of Khalil Gibran in The Prophet. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. That is a powerful message of detachment for all of us. Nothing drives our children farther from us than the attitude that we somehow own them, simply because we are big and they are not. To be able to teach them to be responsible and yet not be personally attached to that outcome is a great lesson. I love my children as much as it is possible to love anyone. I would instantly lay down my life for any one of them. I am sure of this. Yet I am not attached to their success or lack of it in life. Each of them knows that I am not going to have a nervous breakdown or ruin any of the present moments of my life because they fail to do their homework or come home late or do any of the thousands of things that young people do or do not do. I teach them to be responsible both by my actions and my words. I teach them to value themselves by presenting them with a father who does the same and encouraging them as much as possible. But I will not be emotionally or spiritually attached to the decisions that they make as they proceed along their life paths. They have to live their lives. I cannot do it for them in any way. They are learning to assume responsibility that quite often are usurped by parental attachment. When you let our energy flow, our children, when we let our energy flow through our children and do not impede them by imposing our will on them, they become more responsible. And why not? They have no one to fight. They do not have to be obstinate to prove that you cannot control them. My detachment does not mean that I am uncaring. I care immensely. In fact, I care so much that I allow them to make their own way along their path, guiding them here and there, helping them to make responsible, loving choices, catching them doing things right as much as possible, and always reminding myself that I do not own them, they own themselves. My personal growth on this road of detachment has led me to a place where suffering has been eliminated from my life. I have learned in my relationships to others, to myself, and to the accumulation of the stuff that the less I am attached to needing a certain outcome, the more I am the more I enable energy simply to flow through me and outward wherever it goes. Detachment is a big factor in eliminating suffering and in nurturing a sense of inner peace. Having things in life is wonderful, but needing them is attachment. Having loving people in life is phenomenal, and it is important to value and celebrate them every day. But owning or controlling them is attachment. If you are suffering in your life right now, I can guarantee you that it is tied up with some kind of attachment to how things should be going. Detachment is the only way out of suffering, as a passage from the Bhagavad Gita explains. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enters like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. The ocean is always being filled, yet it is always still, with the exception of a small amount of surface vibration. We too can continually open to new growth and remain still, unless we choose to be disturbed by all the things that are perpetually entering our consciousness. The perturbances are caused by our attachment to an idea that somehow, some way, things should be different than they are. Our suffering, regardless of the form it may take, is caused by the mind, by a mind that insists on having preferences and will not allow others to be just as they are. Our most common attachments. Suffering can take many forms and is always played out in form. Our attachments to externals are unlimited. Here are 7 of the most common kinds of attachments and the reasons why you may be treading a path of suffering. Number 1, attachment to stuff. Most of us in the Western world identify ourselves and our relative degree of success or failure by the quality and quantity of stuff that we accumulate. When we make such a connection, we are attaching our very worth as human beings to the acquisition of things. Consequently, we set ourselves up for suffering when the stuff is not in our lives in sufficient quantity. We become our stuff. When we adopt such a stance, you set yourself up for perpetual frustration. What you are really saying is that you are valueless, incomplete, and worthless. You must continuously replenish your supply of material items in an effort to feel valued. The thesis, I am lacking value without stuff, leads to an endless pursuit of more. Striving for more things leads to an endless pursuit of more. Sorry, doesn't say that. Striving for more things leads to the realization that you cannot ever fulfill yourself from the outside. This position prevents you from knowing that you are already whole, that you do not need anything else to be complete. It leads you to hoarding and ceaselessly comparing yourself to what others are accumulating. It takes your human gaze away from the eyes and hearts of those that you encounter to their wallets and material possessions. The more you attach your value and humanity to those things outside of yourself, the more you give those things the power to control you. And when you are controlled by things external to yourself, you are a slave to those externals, making suffering the only available course for you. Granted, you may suffer in comfort, but still the agony is within you as you long as those attachments remain. Number 2, Attachment to other people. This is one of the stickiest attachments, and it will create a great deal of suffering until you learn to overcome it in your life. I am not saying that it is inappropriate to love someone else, to value another person's presence in your life, and to celebrate your connectiveness. These are all very positive results of creating unconditional love relationships in your life. I mean, wanting or needing to own another and feeling useless, immobilized, and hurt if that person is not part of your life in the way you desire. Such feelings are attachments. These are the relationships in which you give power and control over your own being to another, and they will always lead to suffering. All human relationships can be happier from a position of detachment. This means loving people enough to allow them to make their own choices without any flack from you, even though those choices may not be consistent with what you think they ought to be doing. It means having enough confidence in yourself not to be threatened when others fail to live up to your expectations. In lover-spouse relationships, it means loving the other so much that you forget about your own needs and simply accept and love the other for what he or she is, which is, after all, what you fell in love with in the first place. In family relationship, it means being detached enough to allow your relatives to be what they choose to be, and feeling secure enough within yourself not to judge yourself based upon what others decide to do in their own lives. It means forgetting about any evaluation that you might make and instead listening and loving the other family members for what they are, offering advice when asked, and otherwise sending them unconditional love. In your parenting relationships, it means constantly reminding yourself that your children are on their own paths and they are not going to live their lives the way you decide they should. It means guiding them, helping them to become self-reliant, and always letting them know that you unconditionally love them, even when they behave in ways that are self-defeating. Detachment in human relationships does not mean an absence of caring. It means caring so much that you suspend your own value judgments about others and relate to them from a position of love rather than attempting to control or judge them. The person who is detached in this sense is one who will avoid all the unnecessary suffering that most people experience in their relationships. You send love, decline a victim role, and exhibit an infinite supply of caring for yourself and your loved ones, and you are detached metaphysically. Your detachment allows you to have the in unconditional love. Attachment carries with it a subtle implication that somehow you must please me in order to be loved by me. When you learn to let your loved ones be and love them for what they choose to be regardless of your opinion about what they choose, you are detached. Once you reach this state of detachment, you will not want or need to own or control another human being, especially those who are in a close relationship with you. Paradoxically, the less you attempt to own and control someone, the closer you become. Detachment actually encourages you to grow closer in your relationships and to intensify your love. You reduce the likelihood of suffering in your relationships because you have so much unconditional love for others that your love is going to show even if they choose to leave you. In learning to become less attached, you also learn a fundamental truth about loving relationships. Love is for giving, not for taking. This is the true essence of detachment in all human relationships. Number 3, detachment to the past. Learning to be detached from the past and the traditions that are an important part of many people's lives is one way to eliminate some of the suffering that exists in our world. Take a look at all of the people who are fighting in wars around the globe today, and you see them suffering and dying in the name of tradition. They are taught that what their ancestors believed is what they must believe. With this logic, they perpetuate the suffering in their own lives and in the lives of their assigned enemies. Many of these battles between ethnic groups have been waged for thousands of years. With the kind of attachment thinking that is taught within these cultures, the battles will last forever. The minds of those in such cultures are not their own. They are living in form only and dying for a tradition that guarantees enmity and hatred for generations to come. We participate in attachment to the past when we attempt to determine for others what their spiritual choices should be based on what we were taught to believe, what education we seek, what vocation we choose, who our friends will be, how we will vote, what we will wear, how we speak, and even how we choose to think are often determined by attachments to traditions that are so overwhelmingly powerful that to ignore them often means complete ostracism from family or neighbours. You are says your parents. This is what you were born into, and you have no choice about it. Such a sentiment has no place for the enlightened soul. How is it possible for anyone to grow if you always do things the way you have always done things? As we learn about universal principles, we know in our hearts that we are not our form. Our package may look a certain way and have a certain history, but it is by no means who we truly are. It is only the cover for the real I, which is formless and has no need for labels determined by the actions of the past. Attachments to the history of your form as representative of your ancestors and relatives will only cause untold amounts of suffering. Learning to be detached from traditions often takes a great deal of courage, and for those who do detach themselves, there can be a terrific price to pay. However, the price for remaining attached is far greater, and paying it creates much more havoc in your life. The disapproval of those who are addicted to the history of their particular form is far less costly in the long run. Anything to which you are attached owns you in a fundamental way. It is tantamount to tightening the chains and shackles each day to make certain that you do not have a mind of your own. Ralph Waldo Emerson reminded us, be not the slave of your own past. Plunge into the sublime seas, dive deep and swim far, so you shall come back with self-respect, with new power, with an advanced experience that shall explain and overlook the old. Think about that as you consider eliminating suffering in your life that is related to attachment to the past. We can respect and even appreciate the past and the ways of our ancestors. We can love them for having chosen to go their own way. But to be attached to having to live and think the way others before you did, because you showed up looking like them in form, is to deny yourself enlightenment. This is how people and their institutions have controlled others for thousands of years, demanding and instructing children to live only by the established rules can turn them into unthinking servants of anyone in authority. Attachment to a past is responsible for giving guns to little boys, turning them into killers, telling them who their enemies are, and conditioning them in non-think conformity. They grow up with the belief that to be unattached to the past is dishonourable in the eyes of God. It is easy to see. It is easy for us to see this extreme example in other lands, and it is a lesson for us to be alert to how we cultivate attachment to the past. Just having a quick drink. We've been on for an hour and 5 minutes, 15 seconds. Number 4, attachment to your form. If you believe that you are only your body, and as it goes, so go you, then you are inviting a lifetime of suffering. Wrinkles, hair loss, weakening vision, and all indications of physical change will create a sense of suffering in direct proportion to your attachment to remaining the same. This attachment to your body can create a lifestyle of artificiality and fear that will prevent you from being on your path and involved in your destiny. Attachment to your body as the means of fulfillment in this life results in an endless preoccupation with appearance. It is an attachment to the packaging that contains you, and it disguises the knowledge that your body is a temporary form that you are occupying. Being exclusively involved with outer appearance makes it difficult to see that your true essence is a formlessness that resides inside the body. The more you are attached to the body and how it appears, the less your chances of being able to stand in back of your form and see the divineness that is truly you. Addiction to form keeps many from ever considering the formlessness that makes up the largest part of humanity. Paramahansa Yogananda, writing in the Divine Romance, said it this way. I'm sure that name came up today in today's reading. Okay, we're not. Do you know what the next chapter is, guys? Synchronization. So that name. Okay, interesting. I was looking for the Great Swan. Let's get back to Wayne Dyer. Well, we're not. We're getting back to Paramahansa Yogananda, writing in the Divine Romance. Let's just read about the Divine Romance. They said it this way. The saints say this is how you must treat the body, as a temporary residence. Don't be attached to it or bound by it. Realise the infinite power of the light, the immortal consciousness of the soul, which is behind this corpse of sensation. I like that phrase, this corpse of sensation. That is your body, a slave to the rules of form, hindered always by the baggage of pains, aches, bones that crumble, and pimples that break out. But inside, where you are that formless astral thought, you are pure and devoid of the obstacles that roll in form. Attachment to your body is like having an attachment to suffering and being unwilling to let it go. Detachment from your body does not mean a disregard for the perfection of your form. In fact, paradoxically, it almost always results in your taking better care of the covers that house your soul. I have found that I take much better care of my body, maintaining a healthy weight, exercising, getting enough rest, eating fewer nutritional empty foods, since I am less attached to my appearance. I can now stand back and watch my body go through its aging mechanisms without feeling that my being, myself, is deteriorating. Since I am less attached to this body, I am not alarmed by any of its infirmities. There consequently seems to be very little need for me to surface. As a result of this detachment, I have fewer and fewer difficulties with my body. Thus I celebrate my form and its perfection, and I know that I am more than this body. I have love and respect for, but am not identifying with, my physical self. Being in the world and not of it, as Jesus said. I am in my body but not of it, and ironically, it helps me to be in my body much more effectively than when I was exclusively of it only a few short years ago. Number 5, attachment to ideas and being right. This is one of the most difficult attachments to discard. Being right could be considered a terminal Western disease. I listened to talk radio for several hours each day in cities all over North America. It is my observation that virtually everyone who calls to the radio station to discuss a current topic is attached to his or her idea and to the notion of making someone else wrong. It seems to be unheard of for someone to listen to another's point of view with an open mind. The callers almost always are quiet and polite for a few moments while the other party is talking, and then ignore everything that was said and state their own position. Seldom do I hear anyone say, "You make a good point. I'll rethink what I believe before I made this call." This attachment to being right creates suffering, because it is almost always a useless device for communicating with other people. If you cannot communicate effectively, you are going to suffer in your relationships. People do not want to be told how they should think and that they are wrong if they disagree with you. When people encounter such a stance, they automatically shut you out of their consciousness, and a barrier has been erected. If you are the one being shut out because of your inability to listen, it is because you are so attached to what you already believe that you insist on making everyone who disagrees with you wrong. Attachments like these make loving relationships almost impossible to sustain because boundaries are continually being erected. For every idea that you absolutely know is right, there are millions of people who believe that you are wrong. The dichotomy of right versus wrong gets people into a mess of trouble metaphysically. When you encounter someone who believes something quite different from you, and you try to explain how wrong he is, all you have done is define yourself. Your position will most likely make him more adamant about his beliefs. So encounters of this nature almost always end up with each person more firmly convinced than ever of the rightness of his position. To be detached, you must know that all right versus wrong I don't know how you say this word. Dichotomies are the invention of people. Dichotomies. I think that's how you say it. Are the invention of people. Right does not exist independent of man. Thank goodness for that, because that was like completely wrong. How I pronounced that. Back to the book. The universe simply is the way it is, running on the principles that we have defined, but still running independent of our opinion about it. Certainly it's fine to have strong opinions about anything that you choose, but the moment you become attached to these ideas and thereby define yourself by them, you shut out the possibility of hearing another point of view. This attachment to ideas and to making others wrong is the history of the being called human being, and it accounts for untold wars and misery since the beginning of recorded history. Seldom do people stop and truly hear what the other person has to say. Seldom, if ever, do we change our mind based upon solid ideas presented by others, and virtually never are we able to hold two contrary opinions and beliefs in our minds simultaneously. Yet, this is precisely what is required of you in order to awaken to a new level of human consciousness and internal awareness that an opposite point of view can be held simultaneously with your own and no need to make others wrong. This is something highly enlightened beings speak about. One of America's great novelists, F. Scott Fitzgerald, said, "The test of first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. One should, for example, be able to see that things are hopeless and yet be determined to make them better. This is truly what it means to be able to be detached, to allow opposite points of view to reside within you at the same time, and to see the exquisite beauty in such an attitude." Number 6, attachment to money. This attachment borders on being a full-fledged disease in the Western world. It is important to understand that I am not suggesting a distaste for money. I strongly believe that having money is a benefit in life, and I have nothing negative to say about money. Money is fine, and working to make money is part and parcel of living in modern times. What I am writing about here is an attachment to money, such that it becomes the controlling factor in your life. To be detached from the acquisition of money is a difficult undertaking. It is, however, important if you are to feel a strong sense of authentic choice making within your life. I have found that those who are able to do what they love and keep themselves focused on living that way have the amount of money they need come into their lives. They seem to keep that money circulating. Using it to serve others, rather than letting the accumulation of capital and cost of things be the dominant themes in life. They do not suffer from the more disease that is so prevalent in our culture. To be detached from money means to shift your focus to doing what you love and what makes you feel purposeful, and to let the money arrive in your life without being consumed by it. Detachment means an awareness that you are not your bank account. If you feel that you must have money in order to feel happy and successful, then you are attached to it. Your need to have more means that you do not feel whole now, that something is missing. That something you are calling more money. That missing part will keep your mind focused on getting what is missing rather than being here now and doing what you love. And of course, what you think about will expand. Since what you are seeing right now in your life is precisely the result of what you believe, you may want to change those beliefs if they do not serve you when it comes to money. Ask yourself, has money brought me the satisfaction I believed it would? If the answer is no, and you cannot seem to change those beliefs, then examine what the beliefs are attached to. One way to do this is by centering and or meditation. Ask and trust your inner self to reveal what that belief is. It may not be an attachment to money at all, and most certainly is not when you feel dissatisfied in spite of your money. An analogy would be believing you are hungry and after eating still feeling the hunger. Believing food is the solution creates an attachment to food that can never satisfy the hunger. Attachment to food or money in this type of situation intensifies a foredoomed attempt to fulfill a yearning. When we are obsessively attached and would prefer not to be, because it is unsatisfying, it is a signal to examine what that attachment represents. And number 7, attachment to winning. Winning is almost an addiction in our culture, and as long as we are attached to the need to win, we will experience some suffering as a result. Once again, it is important to emphasise I am not against winning. I love to win as much as anyone, particularly when I engage in athletic contests. But the test of awakening in this area is the ability to be detached from the need to win. When we are attached to winning, it becomes an obsession, and we suffer when we do not emerge as the winner. A great test of character is how we react when we lose. If we play competitively and our opponent scores more points or wins, what have we really lost? Absolutely nothing. We simply went out and played a game. If we truly knew this, if we truly know this, we find it easy to congratulate our opponents and feel just as good for them as we would have felt had we emerged victorious. Attachment to winning makes many human beings feel like losers. Maintaining that attachment means feeling like a loser a large part of our lives. So maintaining that attachment means feeling like a loser for a large part of our lives, since no one can always win. Winning is a judgment. When we buy into it, we are agreeing to guidelines that other people have decided determines winnings and losing. I'm just going to reread that part, guys. Winning is a judgment. When we buy into it, we are agreeing to guidelines that other people have decided determines winning and losing. Seeing it as only the outcome of rules established by others can be a way of playing the game without being attached to winning. We can still relish our successful actions and learn from our not so great ones and simply be in the process of participating. Winning or losing can be viewed as just one more rule that we can choose to agree with or not. Attachment to winning means we are the score or performance. Suffering results when we feel like losers. Paradoxically, the more detached we are while actually playing the game, whatever it is, the greater our likelihood of winning. That is, the less focused we are on winning, the greater our chance of doing just that. Read some of the excellent research on the inner game, the Zen of archery, and the like. Outstanding performers are not trying to win. Those people are allowing the action to flow, totally in the moment. Their completion is more like a meditation than a contest. They are in harmony with their body and mind. Great dancers simply let it happen, trusting instincts and intuition to allow their forms to flow with the music. And when they are able to be completely in that inner place of perfect harmony, winning is not even on their minds. The moment great gymnasts or platform divers think about the score, they are unable to function in the perfection that their trained bodies are capable of. Winning becomes next to impossible. This is another paradox. If we think about winning and are attached to it, we lower our ability to function at the level that winning demands. An attachment to winning almost always goes hand in hand with a need to fight our components. The language of competition is similar to that of warfare. Fight, team, fight. Beat them back. Stomp them. Crush them. Annihilate them. Blitz them. Kill them. When we have our minds focused on winning at all costs, our performance level deteriorates. We become tense and nervous and ultimately defeat ourselves. Why? Because fighting weakens, while harmony strengthens and empowers. When we are at harmony within, our bodies perform at the highest level. When we are tense within, we perform at the lowest level. This is the essence of detachment in the game of winning. Stop making it important. Permit yourself just to be, enjoying fully what you are doing in harmony with body and spirit, and your detachment will lead you to the highest levels you have ever reached. Examine each of the above attachments carefully and see if they apply to you. Remember, it is possible to love things within each one of these categories and still be detached from them. Practice letting go and allowing it all to circulate in a network of harmony and inner peace. As we transcend attachments, we learn to shift our consciousness to networking and giving power away, and we discover the metaphysical luxury of living peacefully and productively. Okay guys, that's an hour and 25 minutes and 38 seconds. We're going to take a break here. There is still a few pages left. We're on page 155. 55s. Okay, yeah, we still have a bit to go before we get to Synchronicity chapter 6. I'm going to pause it here. I will be back with well, it's kind of like the final few pages. There can't be no more than, it's about 6 pages, guys. Okay, we will catch up again soon. Okay, bye for now.